Good morning, children. Now, today, what we are going to start is we have already done the causes of biodiversity losses. So, we are on now biodiversity conservation. And the first point in biodiversity conservation, which we are going to study, is why should we conserve biodiversity? Why there is a need to conserve biodiversity? Why there is a need to conserve biodiversity, or why should we conserve the biodiversity? There are three reasons which are given in a book. Number one is narrow utilitarian. First reason is the second reason is broad utilitarian. And the third reason for this, that why should we conserve biodiversity, is the ethical reason. Ethical reason. The third reason is ethical reason of conserving the biodiversity. Okay, so the first reason we come to the narrow utilitarian. Narrow utilitarian is like why we need to conserve the biodiversity for our own, because we need it for our own utilization, because for our own needs. Like, what do we get from nature? We get food which can be in the form of fruits, pulses, then vegetables, etc. So we get food from the nature, we get fiber from the nature, firewood, construction material, industrial material. So industrial material also we get. Construction material, firewood. So many, this is few things I'm writing. Dyes, then industrial material like dyes, the lubricants, the tannins, the perfumes, the resins, all we get from the forest, from the nature. And that is why we need to conserve it. The drugs, the medicines which are used worldwide, 25% of them come from the plants. 25% of them come from the plants, and 25,000 species of plants contribute to the traditional medicines used by native people around the world. What we call as desi davaiyan, or Ayurvedic medicines or homeopathic medicine, which are the local medicines which are used by the people, and which are traditional way of treating the people. The traditional medicine, those traditional medicines, in that 25,000 plants are used. 25,000 plants are used for making traditional medicine. And besides this, what I told you, that the total medicine drugs used worldwide, the total medicinal drugs which are used worldwide, out of that 25% come from the nature, from the forest, from the nature. So this is of, the forest, the nature is of great use to the human beings, for us. And this comes, all this, because we need it for our use. This comes under the topic narrow utilitarian. That means directly, how do we use nature? How do we utilize nature for our own use? That comes in this topic, narrow utilitarian. Next comes the broad utilitarian. Broad utilitarian, it has something big, broader. This is a broader perspective of what we are doing, need to conserve, what is the need to conserve biodiversity. So this carries a broad perspective along with it. Example, the Amazon forest. This region, Amazon forest, which is also called as the lungs of the planet, 20% of the total oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere is contributed from this Amazon forest. So Amazon forest contributes 20% of the world's the total oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. That is why we need it. That is why the Amazon forest needs to be conserved. So this is a broad utilitarian, because here we are not thinking of a narrow perspective of a narrow utilization of the natural resources. Here we are thinking it in a broad perspective way. That means if Amazon forest will be conserved, what is going to happen? The whole earth, all the organisms who are there on the earth, they will get oxygen. So this is a broad perspective of our thought. This is a broad way what we are thinking about. Narrow means this is for first, a narrow use. This is not a broad perspective, like the people who live around the forest, they get food from there, industrial material from there, so many things they get. So this is a narrow perspective. So broad perspective is Amazon forest. What about Amazon forest? Because the whole globe is getting oxygen from it. Now another broad perspective, another example of this, when we think broadly, when we think for the mankind, that becomes the broad perspective, broad utilitarian. Here we are not thinking of a particular state, of a particular area, of a particular country. Here we are thinking it in a broad way. We are thinking of the mankind. We are thinking of the welfare of the mankind. When we say that Amazon forest needs to be protected, that means Amazon forest needs to be protected. Why? Because the whole earth, all the organisms who are living on this earth, they get oxygen from it. That is why it has to be protected. Another is, the second is, related to pollination. The second point is related to pollination. Now what is this pollination, and what are those organisms which are required for pollination? Pollination, without pollination we will not get food. We will not None of the organism will be able to survive if the process of pollination stops. And what are the agents of pollination? We have birds, we have bees, bumblebees, bats. There are bats, there are birds, there are bees, there are bumblebees. So these are the agents, pollinating agents. See, here also, here again, we are thinking in a broad way. Why? Because we are not thinking for a specific group, for a specific set of people. We are thinking it globally. See, if the biodiversity is protected, these organisms, bats, birds, bees, bumblebees, they will have their habitat. They will not lose their habitat, and they will survive properly. They will survive. They will increase in number. They will reproduce and increase in number. And what will happen? More of pollination. When more pollination, see, our biodiversity will enrich. So what this pollination is very important. And when we think of pollination, we don't think of a particular set of people. This is the for the welfare of mankind. So if this is another broad utility of conserving the nature, that if we conserve the nature, the pollinating agents will survive, they will reproduce and increase in number, and will help in pollination, thus helping the mankind, thus helping the mankind to survive. the whole nature to survive, all the organisms to survive. Then the third reason for conserving in broad utility is, you know, something, the nature, when we have a good number of forests, good number of trees around us, thick forests around us, all the different types of birds and organisms around us, this gives us immense pleasure. So that pleasure which we get, like, see, walking in Dalhousie, especially in the area which is there in our school area, when we go beyond that, if we walk there, there are good number of trees, big trees, the weather is so good, the birds, the different the birds chirping around. So this, you know, walking there, purified air, oxygen concentration level is so high, and chirping of birds all over, different wildflowers, their different aroma which we get from those flowers. So this, the nature, walking through the nature gives us immense pleasure. So that we can get, only if we conserve our biodiversity. See, we cannot, like, if we live in the area where there are no trees, like these days where we are living in the plains, we cannot walk during the daytime because it's so hot and sunny. Why? Because there are no trees, the trees have been cut down. These places have become concrete jungles, roads and buildings all over. But if you go and walk in a place like Dalhousie or Shimla, you feel good, because walking through those big trees, walking through those birds which are around, those wildflowers, it gives us, a peace. It gives us pleasure. So this is another broad utility of conserving the forest, the pleasure which everybody will get. Why do the people during their holidays they go to the hill stations, just in search of this pleasure, so that they can walk around in peaceful, in soothing, in cool environment. They spend money, they spend lots of money, they spend lot their time, and they move to the hill stations. You must be remembering when our schools were open on Saturday, we don't, even the day scholars who go by bus, they have to walk down because there is traffic jam all the time. Such big number of people, they come from plains, they rush towards Khajiar, just for that pleasure what we get in when we are with the nature. So this is another thing, why do we need to conserve nature? And this is included in the broad utility. Again, this is for, not for a particular set of people, or this is, in the interest of the mankind, for the welfare of the mankind. This is not for a particular set of people. Okay, that is why this is a second reason of broad utility. Why do we need to conserve nature? The third is ethical. Ethical is, ethical is something related to moral values. Moral values. Now, what comes in this? What comes in this ethical utility, or why do we? What is that ethical perspective of conserving the nature? See, like, in nature we have wild animals, we have plants, and like us, because human is considered to be the superior organism. So like us, even every organism, whether it's a snake or a small mollusk, small snail, or an earthworm, or any plant or a small bush, every organism on this earth which is there, they have all the right to survive. We have no right to kill them, we have no right to help in their extinction. So this is the ethical way why do we need to conserve the biodiversity. Human being is a superior most animal organism on this earth. So they should give protection to other organisms. It's not that the human being becomes the reason of their extinction. So this is the ethical value. Philosophical or spiritually, we need to conserve the forest because we are superior, so we need to protect them. We should not be the reason of their extinction. And in our country, see, most of the gods and goddesses, they are associated with a plant or an animal. Why? It is not that they are really worshipped. Just to tell that all the organisms are equally important. All the organisms on this earth which are there, they are equally important. The snake is associated with some god. Even if you see in some photographs, Guru Nanak Dev Ji is sleeping somewhere, and there is a snake with its hood, spread. It rather, it's giving shade to Guru Nanak Dev Ji. We have seen this picture also. So it's just to show that all the organisms who are there on this earth, they are equally important. It's not that we should worship, we should just do that dhoop batti and all. We should know their importance, that whatever has grown on this earth, whatever exists on this earth is equally important. They are a part of the chain, of a system, of ecological chain. So they should not get extinct, because even if a snake which is full of venom, snake can kill anybody, but snake is also a very important part of our ecological chain. So every organism on this earth has the right to survive. And we, being the superior most organism, we should protect all these organisms. It's not that we become the reason of their extinction. So these are the three ways, these are the 3 points. Why do we need to conserve biodiversity? Is it clear, all these 3 points? I'll move ahead then. Yes, beta, is it clear? Any question from this? Yes, bache. Any question? Any point? Okay. Paras is saying it's clear. Okay. Sukhsahaj also. Sunidhi also. So it's clear. So, bache, this was why do we need to conserve biodiversity. Now the point comes how we can conserve the biodiversity. How can we conserve? What are the various ways of conserving the biodiversity? In conserving the biodiversity, there are 2 points. How can we conserve the biodiversity? 2 ways of conserving biodiversity. The 2 ways of conserving biodiversity is in situ conservation or ex situ conservation. There are 2 types of conservation, in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. What do we mean by in situ? In situ means on site. Ex situ means off site. This is in situ, on site. Ex situ, off site. What do we mean by in situ and off situ conservation? In situ conservation means when we conserve any animal, any plant, or any other organism in its own habitat. That means for conserving tiger, if we conserve the whole forest, with whatever the tiger's territory is, we conserve that organisms in its own territory. That means for conserving tiger, we conserve the whole forest. That means what we are doing, we are to save the tiger, we are saving the entire forest. That is in situ conservation, which is on site. Now ex situ, some organisms, which are at the verge of, which are really endangered, which are really threatened, and urgent measures has to be taken. That means if those urgent measures will not be taken, they will extinct. In that condition, what happens that those animals are picked from their habitat, and they are kept in special protected areas, special protected uh, regions which are provided to them, specially protected areas which are provided to them to protect them, and there they are kept in urgent, they are kept in good protection, they are given good care, they are really taken care of so that they survive and they may not extinct. And that is done off their side. That means they are brought away from their habitat and then they are conserved. So this is ex situ conservation or offsite. Example of in situ conservation, that means we are saving that whole area, we are saving that organism along with its habitat, that is in situ. Example is biosphere reserves, wildlife sanctuaries, national parks. These are of course one more thing which is very common these days, that is sacred groves are formed. So in situ conservation, we protect the organism along with its habitat, like in national parks, like in wildlife sanctuaries, like in biosphere reserves. Sacred groves are also, it is an effort to protect the organisms which are in that particular area. Okay, ex situ conservation is the animal is brought from its natural habitat and placed in a special area which is provided to it, so that it is given special care, so that it can be protected specially. So those are like botanical gardens, those plants which are at the verge of extinction or which are threatened or endangered, those are brought from its habitat and are planted in special areas which are known as botanical gardens. They are taken special care of. Same way, zoos are made, zoological parks are made, the wildlife safari parks are made, the zoos are made. In the zoological parks and zoos, the animals are kept and taken care of. They are given urgent measures, urgent care, special care, so that they are protected. So this is ex situ conservation. Now, what happens in this? Now here, in situ conservation, we will talk about some hotspots. Hotspots. Hotspots are those areas which are rich in some species diversity. That means some species diversity these are rich in, and they show a high degree of endemism. They show a high degree of endemism. When we say high degree of endemism, that means that particular area has a particular type of species which grows and which thrives in that particular area only, and it is not found anywhere else. Like kangaroo, kangaroo found in Australia only, so that area shows endemism with respect to kangaroo. So these such areas, they are included in the hotspots. See, right now, the total number of biodiversity hotspots in the world, when we say in the world, these are 34. Hotspots in the world are 34 in number. So there are 34 hotspots in the world, that means which are known for species richness and high degree of endemism. That means a particular species is flourishing in that area. And for that particular species, that area needs to be protected, and that is considered as a hotspot. Now, in India also there are 3 hotspots. India has 3 hotspots, and those 3 hotspots which are present in India, India has 3 hotspots. The 3 hotspots are Western Ghats, which we did in the first topic, I think, when we were doing Eastern Ghats and Western Ghats species diversity, in which we studied this. So Western Ghats, Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma region, Western Ghats, Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma region. This is second. And the third one is Himalayas. I'll write it for you. I'll erase this ex situ of site conservation. So we have, in India, there are 3 hotspots. India has 3 hotspots. Out of that, the first is Western Ghats. Then we have Himalayas, the Himalayas, which is a region for high biodiversity species richness and is known for certain plants and animals which are endemic to that particular area, which show endemism to that particular area. Besides this, it is Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma region. These are the 3 hotspots in India. Now here particular species are saved and particular this is also known for species richness. Now, if we see the hotspot in the whole world, globally, if we see, the hotspot covers only 2% of the Earth's land area. Hotspot, they cover only 2% of the Earth land area. Only 2% of the Earth land area they cover. But the number of species which are present there, that is very high. And you know, the rate of their extinction is slowed down or it goes down by 30%. By 30%, the rate the way they are in the verge of extinction, that rate slows down to 30%. That goes down by 30%. That means 34 in all, 34 hotspots. Out of these 34 hotspots covers only 2% of the Earth's land area, and the rate at which the extinction is slowed down or it goes down is 30%. So they are helping a lot. Now I come to the other types of in situ conservation, which includes, I'll write it for you. Now here. So this hotspot is number one, which I have mentioned here. Number one is hotspot. We come to the second type of in situ conservation, which is biosphere reserve. Biosphere reserves. Biosphere reserves in all. In your book, the India has 14 biosphere reserve. It is written 14. 14 biosphere reserve it is given, but this data is no more. It doesn't exist now here. The biosphere reserves have increased to 18. There are 18 biosphere reserve in India, and it includes. Now, what are these biosphere reserves? Biosphere reserves can include both. They can include both the wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. That means a biosphere reserve can have a wildlife sanctuary or it can have a national park in it. Okay. The main function of this is to conserve the species diversity. It may have a national park or it may have a wildlife sanctuary in it. Then comes the third type in which the in situ conservation is done. It is national park. National park. The number which is given in your book is 90, which has been increased to 104 now. These are not 90. These are 104 now. The new data is there are 104 national parks. Now, the special characteristic of the national park is, in the national park, no human activity is allowed. No human activity is allowed. No human activity is allowed. This is a region where no human activity is allowed. The human cannot enter any, not even for collecting the wood, not even for collecting the twigs, not even for collecting the fruits or medicinal plants, for nothing. No human activity is allowed in this. And these are now 104 in number. And who takes care of these national parks? This is run by government. This is controlled and run by government. Controlled and run by government. The state government controls and runs it, takes care of everything. Then there are guest house also. There some people can go and stay, but that is also, I think, not to only up to a particular zone. Beyond that, they are not allowed. So these are national park. The third way of in situ conservation is wildlife sanctuary. Wildlife sanctuary, the number which is given in your book is 448. So wildlife sanctuary, the third way. Wildlife sanctuaries. The number which is given in your book, this is the old data, is 448, but these are 551 in number now. The wildlife sanctuaries are 551 in number now. And the characteristic of this is, number one is this is controlled and run by government as well as private organizations. This is run by government as well as private organization. That means private organization, they can also help in or they can also earn some money by taking care of it. So this is controlled by both. And another is only limited human activity is allowed in this, in the wildlife sanctuary. So limited human activity is allowed. When we say limited human activity is allowed, that means like the people who live around the wildlife sanctuaries, they are allowed to enter, I mean, up to a certain limit, I mean, up to a certain area in the jungle for collecting the woods, for collecting the medicinal herbs, or for collecting whatever grows in the forest. Okay, same way the tourists, they are also allowed to enter up to certain area. Okay, they are taken in the bus or taken in the cabs which are provided by the government or the private agencies, and thus only limited human activity. At the same time, the people who live around these wildlife sanctuaries, they are also allowed to do some farming, to grow something in their field which are on the outskirts of these wildlife sanctuaries. So they are also allowed to do some human activity. So limited human activity is allowed in this area. So these are the four type of in situ conservation where the organisms are conserved in their habitat, in situ conservation. So these are hotspots which are made, biosphere reserves, national parks, and one is wildlife sanctuary. The fourth one, and the fifth one is sacred groups. Sacred groups. Example of these sacred groups are Khasi and Jaintia hills in Meghalaya, Aravali hills in Rajasthan, Khasi and Jaintia hills, where Meghalaya. First one, Aravali hills in Rajasthan. Yes, Aravali hills in Rajasthan. Aravali Hills in Rajasthan. Then there are Western Ghats of Karnataka. Western Ghats of Karnataka and Maharashtra. Karnataka and Maharashtra. This is another. Then there are Chanda and Bastar areas. Sarguja, Chanda, and Bastar area of MP. MP also has some such areas. Madhya Pradesh. In MP we have Sarguja, Chanda, and Bastar. These are the areas which are considered as sacred groves. Now, what is done in this? In this, in India we have an old culture of being religious and culture, and to respect our cultural tradition. That means you must have heard about the Bishnoi community also, which lives in this area where this actor Salman Khan, um, he was taken into custody for killing some black buck or some this sort of episode took place. These Bishnoi also, they have been that area, they consider as their god. They really worship is like worship all the animals and plants which are there in that area as god. So this is done by the government, that particular tract of forest is set aside, and the trees or whatever wildlife, whatever trees, whatever wildlife is there in that particular area, it is given protection, total protection. That means nobody can touch it. And those people, there in some in most of them, or in all, you will find one or the other temples. So the people go there to worship, and that particular area is considered to be properly protected, and they really worship all the plants, all the animals who live, who